Hello, my name is Unfi and today I'm going to teach you how to make grass in Blender. First we need a grass texture. I have a full PBR material for grass that I made in Substance Designer. If you want to have your own grass textures then that's fine. You can search on Google Images for grass blades or take pictures of grass from your garden. Make sure you place the blades next to each other like this example and make a black and white mask for the opacity. Let's start making the grass blades. Press Shift-A to add a plane and rotate it 90 degrees towards the camera. Move it up by pressing G and Z, then press 1 to align it on the grid. Go to the Shading tab. Create a new material and give it a name. Okay, now import your textures and connect them to the correct slots. I recommend going to Eevee to change the blend mode from opaque to alpha clip, so you can see the opacity in the material preview. Add a Mix Shader node and connect the Principled node to the top slot and add the Add Shader node to the bottom slot. Then connect the Principled node to the top slot of the Add Shader node and a Translucent node to the bottom slot. Add the albedo map to a hue saturation node and connect that to the translucent node. Create another Mix Shader node and connect the previous Mix Shader node to the bottom slot. And connect the alpha map to the factor slot. Add a transparent node and connect it to the top slot of the Mix Shader. Your material is now done and you're ready to go to the modeling part. Select the plane and go into Edit mode by pressing Tab. Press Ctrl R to make a loop cut. Put a loop cut on both sides of the first grass blade and one on top, so you can cut out the first grass blade. Go in Face mode and select the face of the first piece of grass. Press Ctrl I to invert the selection and delete the faces. Move the plane to the middle and press Ctrl A and apply transforms. Make sure the pivot point is at the bottom middle part of the grass blade so you can easily rotate the mesh. Duplicate the mesh until you have the same amount of planes as there is blades of grass on your texture. Open a new tab on the side and open the UV editor and move the UV of each plane to a different grass blade. If your grass blade is too big or too small, you can move the top edge by pressing double G to move it without changing the UVs. If the grass blade is too big, you will have to move it a bit down and press C to be able to move it higher up. You can also do this for the sides. Do this for all the grass blades. Once you got all your blades as different meshes, it's time to add some loop cuts. Each blade should have 4 loop cuts, but you can choose the amount you desire. To add multiple loop cuts, you need to press Ctrl R and scroll up on your mouse wheel 3 times. I would not go lower than 3 loop cuts and not higher than 7. When you're finished with your grass clumps, you can always add or delete some loop cuts to optimize if needed. You want to have the least amount of unused space in your meshes. The less space that's not used, the better the performance. Move the vertices by pressing double G, and do this for all the vertices of your mesh, and the same for the other grass blades. Make sure you don't lose any parts of your grass either. Move the grass blades a bit to the side so that they are not in your working space. Move one of the blades to TH middle and go into edit mode. In edit mode, you want to select the top part. You will have to move to a side view. Press 3 on the numpad to change the camera view. We will need to change to proportional editing by pressing O on your keyboard or clicking here. You will need to change to fall off from smooth to sharp. With the top part selected, you can now press G to move it slightly bit down. You can also see a big circle from the proportional editing. You will move everything within this circle. If you want to make it bigger or smaller, you just scroll up or down on your mouse wheel. Congratulations! You made your first grass blade. You will do this a couple of times with different blades of grass. You should not make them all the same shape either. You want to have these kind of shapes. The ones that are more bent down will be more the outside of the grass clump. You can always scale the grass blade on the x-axis if you want it to be thinner. Press S and X to do that, but this is personal preference. Choose another grass blade and duplicate it and move it to the middle. Do the same thing like you did with the first blade, but make it a bit different. To make the one that's bent all the way down, You will have to move it way down. Then you can add an extra loop cut for better geometry and rotate it. Most of this part will now be a time lapse, so you get an idea how the rest is made. With this technique you should know how to make all these blades on your own. Remember that you want these kind of blades. Here is an example how it should look like when it's finished. Once you're halfway, you can save time by duplicating the blades and rotate it somewhere around 180 degrees. Move and change some blades to not make it perfectly the same as the other half. From here it's just easier and faster to duplicate blades from your grass clump instead of making new ones. When you're finished with the first clump of grass, it's time to make a second clump of grass. It's important to have multiple clumps, otherwise you would see a lot of repetition. You can make as much clumps as you want with each being different. It's recommended to have at least 4 different kinds of grass clumps. The second clump of grass will look like this. So try to make something similar. You should make grass blades like this example. With this clump, it's also important that a lot of grass blades come from the middle. Around 70% of the grass blades of this clump should start at the middle. The rest is just the same progress. This clump of grass should be a little bit bigger than the previous clump. If it's not bigger, you can just scale it up like I did. Don't forget to select all the grass blades and join them so that they become one mesh. You can press Ctrl J to join them. For the third clump of grass, you can duplicate the clump of grass we just made to save time. We will transform this into this. We started by selecting some grass blades. You can select them by hovering with your mouse over a blade of grass and pressing L. Once you selected a few, you can delete them by pressing X and choosing Delete Vertices. Change the existing blades a bit so they are not the exact same as the previous one. Also move the blades in different positions so it's more different. We will make some new blades which will be more straight than the previous clump of grass. As you can see, these are more straight. They are still bending a little bit, because you don't want them to be as flat as your girlfriend's butt. Don't forget to select all the grass blades and join them so that they become one mesh. You can press Ctrl J to join them. Once that's finished, we can start creating the fourth clump. This is one very easy and fast to make. The clump will look like this. You just make a few bended grass blades and scatter them around. After a few grass blades are placed, you can copy them and paste them. So now it's time for the last clump, which will be quickly done. So try to make something like this and call it a day. Once all your clumps of grass are done, you will have to scale them down to an average of 20 centimeters. You can add a plane or rotate it and scale it so it's 20 centimeters high. Then scale the grass so it's almost the same height. After you've scaled the grass, press Ctrl A and apply all transforms. Your origin should now be at the middle of the grid. With the grass still selected, click on your right mouse button and go to Set Origin, and choose Geometry to Origin. All your clumps should now be at the middle. Now select one clump of grass and go into Edit mode. Select all of the grass blades and move it slightly up so the bottom part is where the origin is. This has to be done for when we are going to scatter the grass around. Add a plane to scatter the grass on and scale it a bit up. Give the plane a grass-like material. The less grass you use, the more you depend on your grass-like material. If you have a lot of grass that your PC can handle, then you can use a dirt material as it will mostly be covered by the grass. Go to the Particle Properties tab, and click on the plus sign to add a new particle system and choose Hair instead of Emitter. Go to the Render section and change the render as Path to Collection, and choose the collection where your grass clumps are located. You may notice that the grass clumps are sideways. I don't know why this is happening, but before Blender 3.0 this didn't happen to me. Select all your grass clumps and rotate it -90 degrees on X-axis and then apply the rotation by pressing Ctrl A. Change the scale under the render properties to 1 and change the hair length also to 1 to have same scale as your object. Move your grass clumps under the plane so you don't see them. Change the scale randomness to 0.3 so that the size is not always the same. Click on Advanced to add some extra options. Enable rotation and change it from velocity/hair to global Z. Change the phase to 1 and randomize phase to 2. Now all your clumps are rotated in a random direction. Go to the Children tab and click on Interpolated. A bunch more grass will spawn in. Set the display amount to 10 or whatever you desire. Change the render amount to that same value. You can always change the display to a lower value if the viewport starts lagging. If you go to World Settings, you can set up a HDRI to light your scene. Back in the particle properties, go to Render and enable Count. I will give each clump a count of 10 and then I will change some values. With Count you can choose how much one certain mesh spawns in. For example, Mesh 1 has a count of 10 and Mesh 2 has a count of 5. That means that there will be twice as much Mesh A in the scene. Change these values to the values you desire. I recommend changing the saturation to a higher value for the translucent shader. I'm adding a little bit of dark yellowish orange Oswell. For low-end PCs you can disable the translucent shader and you can try to make the main color map a little bit brighter and more saturated to your desire. For example, if you're making a sunny environment, make it more brighter and more saturated color, and if it's dark you don't have to change much, but this only applies for people that can't use the translucent shader. If EV has problems with the quality, then you can try this out as well. If you add more geometry to the plane by subdividing, you can use weight painting to control where grass is smaller. Blue will be so small that you can't even see the grass, and red will indicate where the grass will be the tallest. You can also do this for the density. Red will mean grass can spawn in and blue will be areas where there will be no grass. If you render out your scene, make sure denoising data is turned on. Thank you for watching this tutorial. I hope it was helpful, and if you like to show your results, you're always welcome in my Discord server. See you in the next chapter.